Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order so that we can get going. I believe in meetings. I believe in doing right, but I also believe in just moving when we have a chance right off. So the agenda, and I can't remember, Jason, do you put things up or do I just share?
I think you want to do a roll call first.
Yeah, well, I want to have the agenda in front of everybody.
Okay.
All right, so that's where we're at. We'll call to order, roll call, and then declaration of quorum. So take it away, Emma.
Tony Allegretti. Tony Allegretti. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Tama.
I'm here.
Sorry, I couldn't tell if I was muted or not. Let me start that again. Tony Allegretti.
Present.
Ricardo Diaz.
Here.
Scott Dossett.
Here.
Katrina Kendall.
Here.
Daryl Price.
Here.
Beautiful. And that gives us a full board tonight, which is always a great feeling to have. So that means we have quorum. We I guess I just want to go over everything that I have. I just thought I had the agenda in front of me, but there it is. So we have quite a bit. A lot of them are closing kind of things, and so I'm thankful we've gotten some work done, but we'll go through the agenda unless somebody has something else to add that we need to place on that plan. Anybody?
Move to approve agenda.
Thank you. Scott?
Second.
Second. Do we vote on it? I don't remember if we voted, but go ahead, Tamara.
Tony Allegretti.
Yes.
Ricardo Diaz.
Yes.
Scott Dossett.
Yes.
Katrina Kendall.
Yes.
Daryl Price.
Yes.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead then. We have 3 minutes. Well, we have 3 sets of minutes that have been provided. I have to first start with the fact that Lamont has been very faithful in putting things up, and he's moved us up a couple of days at least on getting things ready for meetings as far as announcement to the public. But I highly recommend that we move his pace so that we can do maybe even a week beforehand, have everything out. In this case, that would mean that everybody has read the minutes, and I'm ready for a motion on, I think we're okay if we just say yes to all 3. So any comments on any of the minutes?
I'm fine. I'll move that we approve all 3 sets of minutes.
Okay, so October, November 18th, and November 30th. One of them was the hearing. Any comments from anybody? Do I hear a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you, Daryl. And one more call for comments. 2 of these were regular meetings. I did not attend the last one. They didn't have quorum. Partly my fault. But here we are all together again. Okay, any other comments? All right. Been moved and seconded, so let's just have a vote, Tamara, once again.
Tony Allegretti.
We know you're here, Tony.
Yes. Sorry, I said yes. I didn't.
Ricardo Diaz.
Yes.
Scott Dossett.
Yes.
Katrina Kendall.
Yes.
Daryl Price.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So as we've approved some of our of the past, or at least we approved the minutes of the past that were well written. We don't approve of all of our past. Let's go ahead and go with public participation, as we normally have gotten better at doing. So raise your hand and we will, well, actually I need to get to that screen. So give me a second. I think my Zoom has changed me. Okay, here I am. So, no, doesn't want to give me that feed. Okay, got it. Attendees, we have Christopher Hansen and Jane McClintock that wish to speak. Go ahead. We're still doing a 5-minute as we have, and then we have a public participation at the end. So first one, Christopher, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Christopher Hansen. I live in Urbana. I'm rather disappointed to see that the CPRB is not going to be reviewing the taser video that was, I guess, first viewed at your last regular meeting in November. The plan made by the board at that time was to look at that incident at your next regular meeting, which is today, and it's not on your agenda, so I'm not really clear why that couldn't happen. I mean, there wasn't any prep work that needed to be done. You just, Mr. Searles just needed to come back and play the video again for you. I suppose, actually, I don't even think you need him. You have access to the video. You could just do it yourselves. The next issue I hope to see the board discuss, and I've been trying to ask the board members about this for, I don't know, the past 6 months or so, is the issue of being able to disclose to some extent what happens in your closed sessions. And certainly there's argument to have closed sessions, but I don't see any reason that the board members should have to, or should be restricted to never making any utterances whatsoever about those closed sessions. And I think it causes stress for your board, and it makes the process more difficult from the perspective of the complainant. And I was very surprised to hear Carol Mitten at the last meeting eventually threaten the board with sanctions if they were to disclose what happened in closed sessions. And I can't find any legal basis for that at all. There's nothing I can find that's provided by the legislature and statute, and nothing in the city code talks about sanctions. So I certainly hope to hear you guys discuss that. I mean, that sounds like a pretty obvious free speech violation there. So I hope you'll discuss it. I've been asking you several times. I've sent you case law. I've sent you letters to Illinois Attorney General. I guess it'd be nice to hear you talk about it. I hope the board is aware that Urbana just lost a FOIA lawsuit for someone that was seeking police records, police report and video. I've been raising the issue of FOIA to this board for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, no, closer to 2 years at this point. And I know you guys don't want to talk about FOIA, but the issue is real, and it severely affects people's ability to review and issue complaints about the police department. And just so you're aware, that FOIA lawsuit took 11 months for someone to finally get their records. And as a reminder, we still have this 45-day time limit for someone to file a complaint. So I wonder what you think about that. And it does say in your ordinance, it's very clear that the CPRB is meant to and supposed to work with the mayor, department heads, city departments, and other boards and commissions, and particularly the Human Relations Commission, to try to solve problems. So if there's an issue with people getting records in regards to police and they're bringing that to your board's attention, I think that's something you should have a discussion about and see what you can do and look into it. I don't know if you guys are aware, but Carol Mitten just recently kind of administratively threw out the result of a quasi-judicial human rights hearing that Urbana held last month. And I've been bringing to your attention for the last year and a half or so issues where city staff are basically just administratively quashing what our city ordinance requires. And there's no legal basis for it, really. I mean, sometimes they can cite technicalities, but this is a real thing that is happening over and over. It makes your process untenable for residents, and anything meaningful that might come out of the CPRB or its sister board, the Human Relations Commission, it seems is meaningless because city staff are just going to throw it in the garbage. I also have some serious doubts or questions about our new staff member, Lamont Peppers, who is supposed to be, I guess, helping to run the CPRB now. I mean, his first debut into service for the city was to mute a resident who was complaining about the police at a police listening session, a female minority resident at that. And I wonder if we trust this person to run the CPRB, which has been riddled with complaints about city staff meddling and obstructing the process. And I did a little research, and Mr. Peppers is childhood friends with Police Chief Anthony Cobb, buddies with a retired Urbana police officer, Preston James, listed a school resource officer on his application. I wonder if the city has just hired another person whose job it is to silence criticism. And we saw that in reality at a police listening session where he muted someone for criticizing the police. So do you guys think we're going in the right direction, knowing all these things? Or is it possible we're going backwards? I hope you'll discuss some of these issues rather than just letting them go on and on for another 1.5 to 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Just to double check. Jane, you had your hand up, so I'm assuming you're next, or you are still. Yes, you are. Okay. Ms. McClintock.
Hello. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for being here tonight. I just wanted to briefly say that I did also, similarly to Chris, I had the expectation that that you all might be making a recommendation about the taser video that had surfaced, and I would encourage you to do so as soon as possible. I think providing timely feedback to our officers on how that might have gone better would be very helpful for them and for our police department in general. So I'm sure that you'll get to that soon and provide some good advice and feedback for the officer. I also want to encourage, I appreciate that you're looking at this firsthand account language again, and I want to encourage you to think about broadening the idea of firsthand account beyond just the victim or somebody present physically at the site, because I think that it puts a lot of pressure on the victims of police violence or folks to come forward. It's a lot of courage to talk about a traumatizing incident that might have happened to you. And I think if we want to have a robust opportunity for our officers to learn how to better engage the public and their policy documents and everything, we ought to be looking at as much as we possibly can and giving them the feedback they need to do a better job. So I hope that we'll be able to broaden that that definition as it should be. And thank you again for looking at it. And that's all I got. Look forward to seeing what you come up with today.
Thank you very much for your own participation. It never gets lost on me that we signed up for this as volunteers, and yet there are 10 people here also sitting with us to work through the many issues. Very gratified that you're here. I think best to go through as we do for the rest of the agenda. And actually, I'm not sure what you guys see. Am I sharing still? No, it doesn't look like it. At least it gave me the option again. As we get to the unfinished business, I guess I do want to address the omission, if you will, or as has been pointed out, the taser review. It should have been on here. We would have wanted to, but we've got some preparation to do. And so we will come back as we come back to talk of tasers and other in a upcoming meeting. It would have been nice to have it today, but I think that there are other issues involved there that would be great to just to have a better framing for it than just a follow up of it happened a year ago kind of thing. So you can hold us to that. Did I hear somebody? No? Okay.
I was going to make a comment, Ricardo.
Please, go ahead. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, well, I chaired that meeting where we decided, Tony and I voted to move this along. So I'd like to apologize if me not suggesting that be on the agenda was any part of the slip up that we had. And I also want to kind of make a comment in response to something that Christopher said. It is decidedly not the case that when we look at that taser discharge again, that it will be simply repeating the video that we looked at the last meeting. In order to fully contextualize a discharge, we need to spend back, maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes of dash camera, look thoroughly at the police reports, and kind of begin the process starting, especially since there are at least, I believe, 2 members on the board that may have not been here when we did the first review. So please have patience with us as we try to, move forward on that taser review.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Scott. I have seen quite a bit of movement in the last couple of months. I wish it was because I was chair. I just think that we finally have gotten to breaking down how much we have to learn, both in our training as old and new members, figure out what's behind getting staffed, and also what training needs to go out to the public. There's a lot of this stuff that, as I have learned, just needs a better informational wraparound. So as we consider things for everybody's sake, it's best that we all have both the rules, but the facts in front of us, so we can all better understand how to move along, both on reviewing the police, but as contributors in Urbana. So without too much more, it's easy to get caught up on side comments. So I hope as people move along, so they have their own comments on some of these issues. So let's move along to the first unfinished business, which is then the residents' petition on reforming the police review board. I want to open it up as well. 3 of us were not here at the last meeting, but we've all gotten we've been involved in this one for a little while, and so we had that first listening session. We wish to do another one, and probably at least one more before we would respond. And although we would respond, except that it's been easier to also go through and say, so where are the many parts of the petition as we've gone along? So any thoughts so far?
So, Ricardo, I just wanted to remind you that, and you weren't at the last meeting, and I'm happy to run through this if you want me to, but we had decided that we would take the petition and break it down into basically 3 different buckets. And the first bucket that I had presented at last month's meeting was those issues that had been raised in the petition that were within the control of the city staff to change now without any changes to the ordinance. And I had run through all those items and our response. And then then I had also, I think, circulated to the board members what those other buckets, what items were in the other buckets. And so, yes. So then
Yeah, and so that's why I was giving time as an open, but also as a, for everybody to see this. I knew it was going to take me. I had them on a PDF, but not necessarily. Of course, it can open when I wanted it to. So, yes, and as we divided into those buckets, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, was our first discussion on how do we take the petition seriously. We have not been the only ones to consider this petition. It was actually sent to City Council, and they've done their own work with it. But I think it's been very good for us on our side to look at some of these items and also consider where, one, we have the assumptions behind this. While I did not agree with them, I think a lot of these points needed more feedback and to see where. And so to go through the list and say, these can be done without the intervention of City Council, it's up to them. And some of these cannot, just don't fit any other category. This is what was put forward then as what we can do and we've started doing. And I want to relate it back to something that happened this morning in a little bit. But Scott, as you guys went through this, you and Tony, what do you think best is? I saw the recording, and so I don't know how far to go into repetition or into the feedback, because we are back to this first section.
Carol, can I ask you a question? Did you do a PowerPoint in conjunction with the list that we did at the last meeting?
yes.
Would it be possible for the board to get that? I couldn't find a copy today.
Okay.
I mean, we could certainly take the time to go back over this, Ricardo. I thought we finished it.
Yeah.
Now, sadly, there were several people who weren't in attendance, and so everybody needs to have as much information as they can. I made notes on, my copy of the bucket list, and I can try to clean those up and share them a bit with the board. But I thought, what we heard was pretty logical and pretty practical vis-a-vis staff time requirements. And, we certainly didn't see anything in that first bucket that I thought really should have spilled over into another bucket. So I thought the categorization of those was just fine. So I don't know, Tony may have some comments too.
Yeah, I mean, I think, breaking it down into the three buckets is fine. I think I had it broken down into, the only thing I guess I would list or add maybe is what other departments can do, and specifically, the only other department I can really think of is the police department and what they may be, what they could potentially do to help our board further go through these reviews. But yeah, I mean, breaking it down to three it looks pretty good to me.
Thank you. So I think then the question is, I don't want to avoid doing this. As people look at this list and as we have received it from certain members of the community, I have bounced it around with a few other members of that were not necessarily on the signatory list, both for representation, but also to get different perspectives. Luckily, I think that as people look at this list, in the ones in which they right away know enough to give a comment on, we've been moving with both on eliminating the signature, the notarized signature, and other points like that. It's been gratifying to know that we're not completely off, and that while this list took a long time probably to prepare and to figure out, for us, we're the ones that have to do it through the process. And so some of these things are just take some time. Like yesterday, I found out in amongst my things, a card that somebody gave me about a traveling notary that was in my hand sometime during the COVID, but I did not have it when somebody said, how do I get mine signed? Because I have had the need for notarization in the early points. So there are some things that we not only considered, but we're already in the process, and several others here that are already in the process of being changed. But I think it's easy to overlook the fact that almost many of these, while we are working on them, they just don't happen very fast, both because the system, presenting, follow-ups, whatever else, just takes a while. So as far as actions as to what to do, I'm open for recommendations before we go on to listening on the other buckets. Okay, hearing none for now, then if it's okay with you, at our next meeting, and once again, everybody take note or disagree with me now, so we can all put it in the calendar. There are, the next buckets are good for us to listen, good for us to record, and good for us to consider how we are affected and how we can affect. Because changing the oversight model, while not impossible, is not within our purview. We can make recommendations, but as many of these changes get accumulated, as from ideas to proposals, some of them just do not fit our present framework. And as much as we are all trying to keep within an ordinance, we all realize that the ordinance already has lots of opportunities for improvement. So my proposal is that we all look at this second bucket. We invite people to comment on them, both personally before meetings, and then at the next meeting, take them up for comment, so that we, at least as a board, can stand somewhere as the majority of the board can say, this is where we have received comment from. So anyway, next meeting, looking at this as a listening session with back and forths to discuss bucket 2.
Ricardo, when you canceled the one that was going to be on the 3rd, I think we did have the second bucket listening session scheduled at one point in time. You noted that there hadn't been a whole lot of outreach about this.
Yeah.
And I didn't know whether it would be possible. Well, I would just make a recommendation that we at least make sure that this next listening session get on the main page of the city's website if we can, the things that are coming up, the calendar or whatever, to try to get out to the community a little bit more about the fact that, we're going to be discussing this item. So
very much. And in fact, I would say committing the city is good, because Carol can probably aye or nay. But I think individually, we as a board, part of our charge is outreach. And so I would recommend that we commit to each either bringing a written comment or a person to comment to the meeting, because there's 5 of us, and that leaves about 45,000 people out there. We could divvy them up and say we can each pay 16,000, or we can just say 1. But it needs to go out there beyond us. It's the echo chamber that is so dreaded for everyone. As I listen to the listening sessions on the use of force, that impacts us too, right? And Scott, you were there. I listened to them in recording, but there was just like, there were many times in which that awkward space of, we want to hear you, but there's nobody else here that hasn't yet spoken feeling. We need to do better. And as we do it more often, hopefully the public will take the opportunity. So,
I'll just commit to you all that I'll draft up a flyer and circulate it for your comment, but then you'll at least have something you can push out to people that sort of is an advertisement for that section of the agenda, just to make it easier for you to do some outreach with that, if that would be helpful.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I hereby commit myself to bring to do written or presential 2 people to give us feedback. So,
do we have that meeting scheduled already?
at the bottom of our agenda with the date. Where is it?
The next regular meeting is not we didn't get that on the agenda, but it's on the meeting schedule with all of the dates. So that'll be January 27th.
All right, thank you.
There it is.
January 22nd? 7th, okay.
7.
Okay, thank you.
Can we say that we're going to do this, guys, ladies? It's I don't know. I just, if we agreed to the exercise, then we should make sure that we do our best for the exercise to be fruitful.
Yeah, I mean, I've got social media contacts and groups that I run, and I'll make sure that I reach out to those. I'm not keyed in currently with anybody in the Ministerial Alliance, for example. I don't know whether the city has a kind of a standing mailing list that, we could at least get emails out to. So no, I think we need to work harder. I agree with you, Ricardo, to try to get other input,
Did you say the Ministry Alliance?
Yeah.
Okay, I can reach out to someone. I could reach out to my pastor, and I know a few other pastors too.
Yeah.
So I could just ask them for if there's a mailing list.
Yeah. Great, thank you, Katrina.
I'm looking for individuals, so I've written myself one to bring in on the immigrant side, somebody. Well, it's going to take work because it's heavy reading, but any other groups that you guys want to put forward? Who else should know about
contact the ACLU? They would probably be interested in discussing this.
Yeah.
I would believe. I'm on their steering committee. Then I mean, the neighborhood I live in has an email list. I can blast it out to them, and that might get a couple people to come in as well.
Thank you, Tony. ACLU, an emailing list. Your own circles, Daryl. I'm thinking IMC folk. I can reach out. Should be there more often. I hardly ever go anymore. It used to be a good place for me to be on the radio. Anybody else? Is there a way for? I have been surprised how many people watch UPTV. I don't have cable, and so it didn't occur to me, but I get comments once in a while. I saw you guys on the meeting, and I was like, wow, somebody's watching the meeting. So it may not be on you know, on YouTube or whatever else, but the one that's being transmitted right now, there is somebody out there with their living room that says, I'm bored, and they watch us here. So hi to you. Please come comment. Anybody else? Any other group? Pastors, there used to be a campus association of pastors, or an alliance there too. I know somebody that used to go to those meetings, so let me put myself down. All right. Any other groups? We're not looking, or we're not targeting youth as far as this. And I'm not sure actually how well it works to have the police law enforcement of some type. I know it's hard. It's that gray area of public comment. On the other hand, they are certainly impacted. City council, we have talked about having a rep from city council at our meetings. Shouldn't city council be here to see what people say?
Well, I mean, we can invite them, and it gets a little dicey since we wouldn't want them to be participating. They can listen also. Because eventually there'll be an ordinance in front of them. Eventually there'll be ordinance changes put in front of them.
Yeah. I can see them at least being here.
We can make a point of inviting them.
Okay. Is that yours, or is it our personal?
I can make an announcement, and if you wanted to extend a personal invitation to them, you know, that's fine too.
Yeah. So the chair doesn't really have a lot of duties, so just added one there. I think I should invite them. This is just the beginning of it. We should continue in proposing, letting each other know. I think we've now gotten much better at sending one-to-many emails without responding to everybody and causing a break in the rules of open meetings. Which, by the way, the more I have lived them in various sections of the state, I think to myself, it's a beautiful intention. It certainly narrows the opportunities for learning from each other and working as a team. It wouldn't be my intention to break the law, but I have missed, well, I like it very much when I can contact you individually, but it'd be very nice for us to argue things out more often. So, like I said, it's been in my head for quite a long time, and every time I go to a meeting and it's bound by all this, I think, just speak up. So anyway, can we leave this topic then as far as making the promotion and making the 27th of January being a listening session on the second bucket, and that we will be creating that space. It can't be the only thing we treat because we have a lot more things to work on, but as of today, I would say, unless somebody has, did I share a window? Did I share my screen? I'm gonna risk sharing my screen, so as I flip, I am at least not speaking out of my screen without you guys knowing where I'm at. So I'm back to the agenda. Any more on 5A? Okay. So we'll close it for now. We'll see you at the next one, and let's make it all known. Sometimes I get texts during the meeting, and it's hard for me to keep track of them. So when you do that, I just know that I can't get to it. 5B.
Okay.
First-hand account. We did have a comment from Jane about it, and I think that we have had probably 3 to 4 meetings in which we've touched this topic quite a bit. It's made me look at the ordinance a lot more as to what it is and done some personal research. I was not here at the last meeting, but I do know that from a couple of you, you say, well, this is the letter that we get from the city about it not being possible for us to do more, at least on admitting video. For everyone's watching, it was a letter that we as board members received. It's not necessarily part of the packet, or is it foilable, or I'm not sure what the circulation of it is. But we have somebody here that will talk to us about it too. Carol.
I just wanted to tee it up a little bit more if I could, if you're
Yes.
ready for that.
Yes, we are on 5B, and we'll need to get your perspective so it'll prime everyone else to talk.
Okay, so there was, just to maybe recap how we got here, there was a desire on the part of the CPRB to have the council amend the ordinance to change the first-hand account language to allow what I call for shorthand video witness. And Katrina took that to council one evening, I think it was in September, maybe October. And a number of questions came out of council, and they sent those questions back to you through me. And there was a clear indication at that time that it was their expectation that the questions would be answered, and then the proposal would return to them. And then the CPRB voiced an intention to, rather than wait to have the ordinance amendment amended, that you would simply decide to interpret the language of first-hand account to allow video witness. And in the course of reporting that back to staff, it was pointed out to me that that is a violation of our collective bargaining agreement, in addition to the fact that that was something that, at least in the city legal's interpretation, was inconsistent with first-hand account. So that led to the authoring of a memo that you have, and it is foiable to anybody who also would like to have it. I circulated it to the council members, and I circulated it to the CPRB members. It was written by Ben Garrett, and it was dated October 30th, 2020. You all were sent a copy of this. And so rather than have just me here to talk about this once again, I asked Ben to join us tonight since he's the author of the memo. And so I'll just, I don't know if Ben, you wanted to say anything or just respond to questions, but I just want to say again, it's the city's position that without amending the ordinance and amending the collective bargaining agreement, that you may not use a video, somebody who was not physically present and only witnessed a video to conform with the ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to introduce myself really quickly, if that's okay.
Very echoey, Ben, at least for me. So somewhere to the mic.
There's more of an echo than usually when I'm talking to you, Ben. So I'm wondering, are you on your,
I'm only on my phone. I don't know why that is.
Okay.
But I hear
Go
it
ahead.
too.
Go ahead. We'll do the best we can.
All right. Well, Board, thank you very much for your time tonight. I'm sorry about that echo. I don't know why that is. The one thing I wanted to make sure everybody understands, my background is I am a management side labor and employment attorney. I represent municipalities throughout this state, and about 90% of our work is in the public sector. My daily job is disciplining public employees, including police officers. in that role, I go toe-to-toe with police unions on a constant basis. So I am not here by any means as an apologist for police misconduct. When I see police misconduct in my job, I work with our clients to hold police officers accountable. Fortunately, I feel very strongly that as a result of the work I do, even though I work with the absolute worst officers, that's what I'm called to do, is to deal with problems. The vast majority of police officers that we work with are very good, intentioned, hardworking people. I don't know about you, but in my daily job, I'm happy to say I have never been shot at. I have never had somebody try to stab me or knife me or run away from me. And that's what our officers deal with on a daily basis. It's really important that in my job, and I think in your job as well, that while trying to hold accountable those officers who do a bad job, we don't accidentally throw under the bus the people who are doing a good job. And I think that's important for one really fundamental reason, and that is that we do not want to discourage good people from becoming police officers. And that is something that our police departments face as a challenge already across the state and across this country. That people say, look, if somebody's going to point a gun at me and I'm going to make a split-second decision how to react, and then I'm going to be crucified in the press for the rest of my career, I don't need that kind of stress in my life. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to be an attorney. I'm going to be a professor. I'm going to be a city administrator, or whatever the case might be. And if we crucify the good officers or put them through the ringer, we end up chasing them out, and we have a race to the bottom, where the people that are left that are willing to be police officers are not necessarily the best candidates. So we need to be careful about that. But I, in my job, do deal with bad officers, unfortunately. And I would tell you, if I thought this requirement of first-hand knowledge was an obstacle to holding bad officers accountable, I would absolutely let you know about that. I run into the buzzsaw of union negotiations every day. I run into the buzzsaw of grievance arbitration every day. There are real problems there. The limitation of not accepting complaints based on video evidence only, it is not a problem in terms of holding bad officers accountable. The victim under your ordinances is always welcome to come forward. A person who was there on the scene is always able to come forward with a complaint to the CPRB. There are very legitimate reasons why those people might not want to come forward. First of all, they might think that they were treated entirely appropriately. But second of all, it's also the case that when our police officers interact with the public, it is often on that person's worst day of their lives, whether they're a victim of a crime or whether they are the perpetrator of a crime. That is their low point. And they don't want to relive that. And they don't want to have that dragged into the public eye to relive it again. Some people do come forward with complaints, and that's their right. But if they don't, that's their choice, and we should respect that. But more importantly than my opinion, because I'm not a board member, is the law. And in that regard, we face two challenges. First of all, the city ordinance that specifically says complaints need to be brought forward based on by a person with personal knowledge. And second of all is the collective bargaining agreement. And that collective bargaining agreement also says that complaints against an officer must be signed and sworn by a person with personal knowledge of the incident. Watching videotape does not give you personal knowledge. Watching videotape allows you to see a two-dimensional image that could have been manipulated by somebody else before it was posted on the internet. And we all see that every day when we're watching the political dialogue and political ads that are run and quotes and snippets that are taken out of context. Personal knowledge means you were there and you saw it, tasted it, smelled it, touched it yourself. And that's what personal knowledge requires. And that is how the city and CPRB itself has interpreted that requirement for a long, long time. And if that requirement were to be eliminated by the CPRB, we're going to run into a significant problem with the police union, which is they will file a grievance saying that that is a violation of their collective bargaining agreement. And one of the tools that arbitrators are going to look at is not only what external law says, which I've identified in the memo that you're looking at, but arbitrators also look at what's called past practice. How have the parties themselves interpreted this language historically? And historically, the CPRB and the city and the officers have all agreed that that firsthand knowledge requirement cannot be satisfied by somebody watching a video. And so to eliminate that requirement without going through the collective bargaining process is going to be futile, because we're just going to get a grievance that, unfortunately, we're likely to lose. So regardless of my opinion, the contract ties our hands on this issue. And really, the way that contract is written, the board doesn't have the power to accept complaints that are based solely on video evidence. So with that, I've said a lot, probably more than you wanted me to. I apologize, Chairman, but I'll definitely pause for any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions, comments by other members?
Mr. Garrett, the ordinance doesn't say personal knowledge, correct? If you look at 19-28D.
One second.
I'll read it. It says, complaint shall be based upon a first-hand account either by the person involved in the incident or a witness to the incident, except that a minor.
So, I mean, it doesn't say personal knowledge. It says first-hand account, and then we don't have a definition of first-hand account.
Well, if you're not there, it's not a first-hand account.
I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
If you're not there, it's not a first-hand account.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of what we're debating here. You know, I think you're one of the issues that you brought up is that these videos, or the issue we've struggled with, I think, is that, you know, viewing the video itself is not going to be the only evidence that we would review a complaint. It's a standing issue. It gets you through the door. So if there was someone who witnessed an incident on a video and they filed a complaint, obviously we would have UPD come in and testify or talk about and discuss what the video showed. We'd possibly hear from the officer, or possibly hear from somebody else who was there come forward. That's part of the issue, I think, that I struggle with, is that if we're going to close the door to a complaint just because it's what someone viewed on the video, that we should be more open to seeing these things than not.
The complaint, after all, it's the beginning of a process. It's not even the actual, you know, it's
not the hearing.
We call it a hearing even when we get to the appeal, but in essence, it's not yet a hearing. It doesn't, rules of evidence do not apply to that level. But by the time we get to an appeal, we have a lot more than the person's complaint. And therefore, the video can be modified, or it's only one view, or whatever else. Those are all kind of counterbalanced by a full examination of an incident versus what started it to begin with. So for me, there's the arguments against them being presented that do not seem, and I have to agree, if it is right now against a contract, so I'll abide by it myself, because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But by starting it and by proposing that there's a definition or an opening for it, what we're saying is, not only are we, but there's members of the public that want the reconsideration, but two, that the police themselves, as they walk into a contract negotiation, as they're presently doing, they know that this is a point that needs to be either better exemplified or counterbalanced in their own contract as to other things they want to argue, versus where does the complaint start? Okay, any other comments? I have one more, but I want to make sure that other people have lots of. Okay.
I guess sorry, I had one more question, Mr. Gert. So you're saying ultimately, if we were to take a complaint based solely on video, then the city should expect a grievance being filed? Is that what you're saying?
Section
Okay.
15 of the Labor Act says that a collective bargaining agreement trumps and supersedes any contrary city ordinance, city statute, rule, regulation. The language in the contract actually is even more clear than the ordinance itself. It says complaints against an officer must be signed and sworn by a person with personal knowledge of the incident. Michelle, you had used earlier the reference to standing, and I think that's a good analogy. In a court, a person needs to have standing in order to file a complaint. And that's a good filter to make sure that the people presenting those complaints have a sufficient interest for the court to render a full and fair hearing. Without that standing requirement, for example, if I were so inclined, I could watch hundreds of videos and file them with the City of Urbana CPRB and just inundate you with work and make it so that you couldn't get to the complaints that actually deserve your attention. And I don't think that's what anybody would want.
So we've heard and we explored that same situation, and as a board, we say, I think in majority, even before we went to City Council, yes, we could be inundated. However, that would be our choice as to how to take things up and how to deal with it. So I understand that much. So the first part, if it's in the contract, and I'm looking at, I think it's Article 22, the provisions, I don't know, it's public. Is the contract public? I don't know. Yeah, it's in my hand. So it says 22.2A, police officers subject to the CPRB proceeding shall not be required to appear before the CPRB. Their appearance shall be optional. However, should an officer appear before the CPRB, that officer does not waive his or her rights under the Uniform Peace Officers Disciplinary Act in a CPRB proceeding. I wanted that as the further context. Then B says a complaint brought against a police officer by a member of the public shall be investigated by the police department in accordance with department policy. And then C talks about confidentiality. I don't know if there's anything more. This is the 2017 police, the contract.
There's also a side letter attached to the back of it. I'm just looking for it now. Give me 1 second. It's
yeah, I see it. It's on page 57.
Yes.
Complaints against an officer must be signed and sworn by a person with personal knowledge of the incident, and language will be included in the CPRB ordinance that false complaints shall be subject to prosecution. I don't know if the latter part of that sentence is actually true.
There's actually a provision in the Uniform Peace Officers Disciplinary Act that addresses that.
That would be there, but I don't know if it's in our ordinance that.
No. The ordinance was never changed in response to that.
Yeah. So flag that one. But in the new contract, since we've started taking complaints without a sworn testimony, well, without that person being sworn.
Well, no, what we did is we changed with advice the attestation from a notarization to a spot on the bottom of the form, which all the way up through city legal, I think we had agreement was equivalent and less burdensome than the notarization. So
Okay.
a complaint filed, as I understand it, with the new form is still a sworn statement.
It is still a sworn statement, and it makes clear that it's under penalty of perjury or whatever. It just expands it and also includes the firsthand account language as part of the sworn statement.
So I
Right.
guess
So
my
in-
thought was that we would need to flag that too, but we've taken care of it, that meets this contract or not.
Yeah, although the ordinance specifically does not reflect the liability of submitting a false complaint. Right. The form that we have does.
Yeah, I'm looking for the form now because I needed it earlier today to show it to somebody and I moved it. Well, my argument was going to be that there are other parts of the contract that may or may not fit our ordinance, and just by one part it already does that. So we could be. But on the other hand, the reason I would argue with that is that a contract is an agreement between parties, and therefore either party can suggest changes. We are on the fringe in that we are not the parties making that agreement, but we are by ordinance instructed to suggest changes. And in this case, at minimum, that's what we did with the city council, which even if rejected, it is a desire of this board to have more leeway as to how to begin the process of a complaint. It's not even how to carry out the rest of it, but having an open door to complaints is precisely our job, even, and I'm speaking even in the background of 2020. So I think those are the comments I had. And after we close this, I want to bring in just one more relevant comment on this. Anybody else questions?
Well, I guess just a comment, and I know this is a very difficult request, but this is the second time in the board's history where the collective bargaining agreement has essentially nullified a portion of the ordinance. Now, as you know, I didn't agree that video was firsthand in the first place, and I had to be convinced about that. And frankly, I'm not certain that I ever was truly convinced, as much as I wanted to push this to a point where we could come to a resolution about it. But the other one, of course, is the subpoena power, which is in fact written into the ordinance, unlike the video presentation of a complaint or video as a basis for a complaint. And so I've often wondered at what other cases, what other points is our ordinance in fact limited by the agreement with the FOP. And I've asked for a review about that, and I've never got it. And I understand it's almost an impossible task because you'd literally have to go line for line through the ordinance and bounce that off Mr. Gert in order to make certain, to feel out those sensitivities. But that does continue to be a concern of mine, is what other areas of the ordinance are potentially impacted by the agreement with the FOP, if I'm using the term correctly, the collective bargaining agreement. Certainly, this gets to be a greater concern should we recommend to the city council that the ordinance needs to be changed. We know that we have cleanup work to do inside the ordinance. And, you know, my original copy of the ordinance is flagged full of suggestions and things we could try to change. So I think this issue with the FOP is not going to go away. But it seems to me as if as a board, and this is kind of where we were during the last meeting, again, which had, you know, there were only two of us there, you know, at that point in time, we didn't feel like we could push this video origin for a complaint at all, because essentially we were being told that we were in violation of that. So I don't have anything other to say than that, to kind of just note again that the subpoena power, which we thought we had when we started, was, you know, taken out, you know, with the same concern about the collective bargaining agreement.
Well, just to be clear, you have subpoena power for everyone except police officers in the ordinance.
Listen, that's a good clarification. Thank you.
Yes, I hadn't read it with that lens. The contract with the union is out of our jurisdiction. And as I understand, is presently being put forward. There will be changes to it, and even if a line-by-line comparison were to be made, honestly, whether it's yours, Carol, or the chief's, it's a big responsibility for you guys to know as much and what implications you have. My task, as I understand it on the board, is to make things fair for someone to be listened and for consideration as to if the correct thing was done, if procedure was followed, but especially if not, even if procedure was followed and something seems unjust, that we would put it forward as a recommendation. How we get a complaint to us has been refined recently, improved, and there will yet be other ways that we ought to consider so that we get a full entry to people's satisfaction and dissatisfaction with the police. As I understand today, we would not be able to accept, because we are the receivers of complaints. So as I understand, as of today, we would not be able to accept video as the sole beginner of a complaint unless the person was involved either as a first or second party.
If they were physically present and had a firsthand account, that's what's required.
It sounds redundant. If you're present, you may not have an account, but if you have an account, what we're saying is it can't be video.
Right.
Okay. Just to clarify. I don't want to put it to rest in that I agree with you, Scott. Things will be coming back up, and this one might not be it, but there are other cascading things that come up as we consider the second bucket. And for me, this puts it in the second bucket. This is one of the items in the second bucket that we'll treat at the next meeting. But as for today, I wouldn't want to drag it on longer than necessary to hear people out.
Okay, can we excuse Ben then?
I'm just putting it out that I'm about to close the discussion, and if that is true, then yes, we are closed with this discussion, and therefore, thank you very much for visiting us, taking some of your evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
I use first names all the time, but it was clear that Mr. Allegretti was using a last name, so it made me doubt my own
Oh,
assumptions I do.
I guess I should have just called him Ben.
That's okay, but it just alarms me that when I'm not following protocol, because I mess up enough that sometimes I'm trying to look at the phone and at the screens and whatever else. I don't follow protocol.
I think, Ricardo, to me, a cut to the chase is that this board has agitated with the city council and staff over this idea about video evidence for the past 3 or 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, those entries are known to the people who are doing the negotiations with the FOP. And so I don't feel it's necessary for any other kind of formalization of our desire. I mean, I'm ready to walk away from this in the context of what the board is going to do in terms of action. If the agreement with the FOP changes, then, we could revisit that.
Yeah. Actually, that provides me a small opening for something today. I'm going to show you, I'm going to share with you. I hate having so many screens. And then I forgot to share, so share. Related to this it was all a timing triggering issue, in that today I received a call from, well, actually 2 days ago, and it was timed. Can you see blue screen? Can you see blue on your screen? Okay, so as a background, I used to work for the Wharton School a dozen years ago, more by now. But anyway, they've got a section called analytics. And a couple of days ago, they contacted me wanting to talk and essentially going through this survey. I want to put it out so that you guys know that as we consider things, and we're just a lowly little town doing it and trying to figure it out, there are people nationally trying to figure things too. And this video as firsthand evidence was one, is hard enough to try to tease out, except that we're not the only ones. The survey that they put before me and then got a call this morning was a very deep, no, not so deep, good categories of things for me to consider that others are considering, and they're taking tally at a national survey. Enough that they're calling people around the United States, big cities and small cities, as to what review boards and the types of review boards are considering. What powers do we have? What considerations do we have? I try to answer as far as I know that we are presently doing. None of them were so hard that I couldn't answer within their categories, although there was explanations. But as she probed, the interviewer probed, this kind of question, what additional, what access do we have to information within the police when a case comes before us or not, reminded me that our endeavor to choose and to try to interpret whether video evidence is enough to start a complaint is a much bigger question than us. So I am also willing to leave it for now, but I think this is the kind of society that gets redefined as we all consider that we live in the age of phones and Facebook, and whatever hasn't been written and whatever traditionally hasn't been included in a contract has to be considered now differently, because we are. And the indignancy that the residents feel at times are usually a step ahead of what was written several years ago, both in ordinance and contract. So this is a pitch for change, because we can either be on the laggards, and lawyers would probably agree that that's what we should be, let somebody else deal with the lawsuits. But on the other hand, as far as the principles of things, I want to be as informed and as ready to propose change as possible. This last one, what languages can civilians file complaints against police? You know, one of our previous members really wanted to make sure that we put that forward. And I thought to myself, and the answer is video, for somebody to just speak their complaint. And we do it. We've been considering that. So anyway, a side comment, but it was like so timely. The lady spent almost 2 hours with me trying to get a feel for what it is that we do in our civilian police review board in our little 45,000 person town.
Yeah, it's a big deal, Ricardo. I mean, you know, in this accountability and transparency NACO workshop that the city sent me to virtually about a month ago, you know, the second session in was on video, forensic analysis of video. And I'm sure there are PhD programs out there for forensic analysis of video. You know, best practices, source materials, misinformation was all a topic of that. So we're wading into pretty deep waters here in some ways with the technology that's really developing. You know, you go all the way from body-worn cameras, which I think is what's really stimulating this whole thing, is that we're really building out body-worn cameras and officers now that are grabbing, you know, 30 seconds or so, 30 frames per average, 30 frames per second average to some surveillance videos, and these Nest things you can put on your doorstep that are 4 frames or less. And you really have to start getting into the weeds a little bit if you want to try to get serious about using video in the manner I think that we're talking about.
Or as we've had recently, that state law says, or the first 30 seconds of pre-video don't have sound, and then the sound kicks on when they turn it on. That was news to me as to both the technology. I first saw it at the cars and the squad cars, that the squad cars are constantly recording, basically. It alarmed me. I said, shoot, if whenever I do something bad, I better not be near a cop car, because they can zoom in over a block and they can do all this. But, you know, we are, because we're in the middle of this, we are getting the different perspectives of how much information and how it's collected and what we do with it. The body cams, I remember when they were approved and we were all happy about it. Who knew that at this point, not only are they there, but we should be using them. And before I forget, that's one of the reasons why we are learning and implementing on our reviews the taser parts, because even that changed since the beginning of our first encounters with what that was. I wanted to put before you the agenda so I can feel Daryl looking at me as to the agenda. So I'm going to go back to there. So we're closing it for now, unless somebody else wants to put it on the agenda for next time and has something specific as to what the next step is. I don't agree that suggesting it to council is enough, but that'll be when we have coffee, Scott. We'll figure that out. We are still on item 5, unfinished business, first-hand account. Now we are on C, status of complaints and appeals. Normally we would ask staff to give us the numbers, the round numbers, but Scott, I know you're in the middle of C and D. Well, actually, no, the longer version, it's not in our agenda, but you have a lot to say, and I very much enjoyed your spreadsheets. So, status of complaints and appeals as of today.
I can give you that one.
Thank you.
It's unchanged since last month, and I think probably the month before. So the total number of complaints is 92, and the total number of appeals is 64 that we've received in 2020.
Thank you very much. There's a long asterisk for explanation on that, but the national interviewer really got on me for that. Says, what? Your average? And then this? Long story, didn't have to go into details, but it was kind of funny to be put on the spot for it. So we're dealing with them. We had a hearing 2 weeks ago. We will be having a hearing that's, the when's good went out. There was one time in which we could, but the hearing officer could not. So we're gonna do a rehash of it. Everybody please answer it, because it would be very nice for us to announce it at these meetings so that the person coming to the hearing can also time themselves. But we are looking for something in January as soon as we can. But internally, we have to line up a lot of resources, including the availability of this board. So if you are considering changing, just go ahead and change it. You do.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I heard from everybody, and I have the tentative appeal hearing dates under 7C. Those been confirmed with we would at least have a quorum of board members and the hearing officer. That's under 7C.
Okay, so now we need the appellant to get them. I understand that we're not court. I mean, I always go to court when I get called, because I could ask for a change, but I don't know what that's going to be. In our case, it takes a lot to pick these dates already on our side. You just said a little while ago, we do have subpoena power over an appellant?
Yeah, no.
Carol's statement was that we had subpoena power over basically anybody but an officer, or I'm assuming that means maybe the chief.
So,
yeah, I don't know that the intention was ever that you would subpoena an appellant, but you do have this under 1936A4. You have the power to subpoena witnesses and case-specific records and tangible evidence,
okay.
subject to certain limitations.
So let it be announced that we that we are getting everything ready for the continuation of the cases we're considering and hearing for when we have the hearing, and that we have that will notify the relevant people and make sure. So those are the tentative ones. We'll confirm them ASAP so we can continue the work on appeals. Is that okay? Thank you. So that dealt with an item on 7, but we're still on 5, trying to finish off the long list of things moving. Scott, you have been working on the annual report, but the 2019 one took you to 2013 and on. But on the 2019 one, you were working to have the information so we could review it. I don't know.
The 2019 report, which we have a draft for, generously worked on by Elizabeth Hannon, and I'm sure staff, actually covers the years either 2012 or 2013 through 2019. And so knowing that the complaints had not been systematically reviewed and placed into a spreadsheet, the review of which I consider to be a seminal responsibility of this board, if not the literal review of the complaint packets themselves, which I have wrapped to you guys before. So I went through everything. Thanks very much to Carol and the people on the second floor, and have recently sent you with admonishments about the fact that they are draft, Excel files that are pretty highly annotated in some cases for every complaint received by the CPRB, Most of these were through UPD because that's the way the system was working then for those years from 2012 to 2019. It was always my intent, feeling the way I do about complaint, not just appeal review, that this information could be, or I hoped would be, appended, amended, mixed into that draft 19 report, and we can get ourselves out of the hole that we're in with annual reports that is about 6 years deep at this point. Now, I sent those all out to members about a week ago. Ricardo, you have responded. I did note during that initial thing that some of this might be changing, and in fact, I have now a commitment for someone who evidently is pretty good with Excel, and I've made contact with a young man in the administrative department at the city. Thank you, Carol, who was going to help me do some calculations across fields, which I know I used to do in Excel, but I could not get myself to do it. And which I actually asked the board for help with when I sent it out. And so I am hoping that by the end of next week, middle of next week, this person and I have been able to do some calculations and start working on graphs out of this. And again, it would be my intent that those go into this annual report, bridging this gap. That's actually an issue that Carol and I haven't spoken about at all, or you and I, Ricardo, and that is, you know, who then takes authorship of this 2013 to 2019 report, and how do we finally get this thing in the can and out to the public? And so that's something what I wanted to bring up now. As I mentioned during that email that had the Excel files in it, I had run a quick spell check through my work and kind of was doing a logic check all the time when I was doing the entry. I mean, this literally meant that I was in the conference room in the city building, going through and reading every individual complaint for 6 years and trying to take pertinent data off. For example, a couple of the fields I had were complaint date, incident date, filing date, and finding date. And I think we're all going to be real happy once we get a chance to just look at that stuff in a graph, really how well in 95 to 98% of the cases, UPD has responded to complaints vis-a-vis timing. At least for this period. I know a lot of people in the community have concerns about timing and all kinds of complexities. But those two fields alone, the first three fields in those spreadsheets, I think are really demonstrable of good intent. And so with Carol's help, with this Excel person, I expect to try to render some more details, some more graphs. I would highly appreciate a look at those Excel files and any kind of either interpretive questions or suggestions that board members might have, so that maybe by January of 21, we can put this series of annual reports to bed and to the public.
So Scott, thank you very much. I mean, this is a lot of work, and like you said, this is what you sent to us was draft. But just to get the basics, it takes time. I'm glad that you're catching us up, and feel the need to. Well, I looked through the spreadsheets, and as I started having questions, I realized that it was premature to do so. The analysis of the whole thing, patterns, whatever else, may not give us, this is after the fact, but we will have a good documented history of where we've been. And frankly, as far as authorship, You have had the longevity. We're all babies compared to you as far as what the work of this has been. So you have probably the light to say, this doesn't sound right or doesn't fit my experience. But as far as timing,
I was specifically referring, Ricardo, to the fact that we've got a draft report, and somebody's got to lay all of this stuff together to come up with a cohesive package that, you know, has to be approved by, you know, folks in the city building. So
We'll figure it out.
what do you mean?
We will figure it out, Scott.
Okay. You guys will do the layout, is what you mean? The writing.
Well, who's gonna write text? I mean, you know, there are Excel files that detail years. I could spend another 10 hours going through those Excel files alone and then rendering some kind of descriptive information from it. And if I'm the only one who feels strong enough about this to do that, I probably will. But
you won't be. I've joined my Excel files to just get a feel for the category that really glares at me still is disposition. Only because the language used in disposition sounds so harsh to me. If I was getting any disposition letter that looked like this, I would not like, you know, whatever the answer was. But it's just, it's the standard language, and I understand that much. But yes, we should do analysis before we get to writing, and I see it as a collaboration, right? Before we put it out as a report to the public. But there is one more part that I think that we need to finalize, and that we started at the last hearing. I think I was sitting next to Tony. The list, we are also required not just to report, but to keep a log. And in that log should be the items that we would need during an appeal. And as we've had interaction with the public, there are times at which it doesn't seem like we have the information. And there have been times in which, when you and I last worked on the tallying, that there were documents not in the right place. And so as we keep a log and we make an improvement of what did happen and what we report on, from here on, not only because of appeals, but because it's good practice, we should have a list of everything that exists with the case, so that we are ready and not looking for it during the hearing. And that includes police reports and the videos and whatever else. When it's not in one place, it seems like some parts may have been purposely misplaced. So as we have a good log with a checklist, we could see on our Excel sheet what is present or non-existent. If it's not present in our folder, we have to assume that it's non-existent, and we don't have to use our subpoena power to make sure that all documents are there. But to me, that would be part of filling in the gaps that we've had before. But the reports on the numbers, I think, will be are a good way for the public to see where we've been and what else might be needed on top of that. Because if we don't fulfill what we've needed to do, then it's hard to add more things to it.
The one place where, I mean, I don't want to switch gears into appeals right now, because although I think the appeals are something which should be detailed in the annual reports for sure. So there's a backtrack for somebody. But in terms of the complaints themselves and an analysis of the complaints, it is my strong feeling that the demographic information that's available, that the dispensation of the cases, that the initial complaint type, and the resolution are all powerful ways that we and the community can look at the complaint process.
Yeah.
And
including attribution of officers or accumulation of office of a particular officer's complaints.
sure, that, yeah, we've talked about that in these meetings before, and that's something that I lack the ability to do. Right now, you will all notice, and one of the reasons that these were asked to be kept private by members of the board is that I had no other way to reduce officers except by their name. And the agreement that we have had is that those would be, you know, there would be a numbering system created.
Yeah.
It's not clear to me that that took place in the 2019 work that has been done to date. And so that's that's one of the things that we need to work on.
Yeah, we'll have to come back to that because some of this information is foilable anyway, and therefore where it gets put, other towns actually flat out put out names. In our case, we have not. And I believe that we as members of the board have had enough opportunity to see and vouch for the fact that this information is correct, or that we are questioning or filling in the gaps as we go. So
I guess my plan of action here to kind of wrap this up is I will, continue working with Ricardo and Carol. And after I get the Excel help that I've asked for and been granted, I will probably put forward to those two people some kind of a plan of action about how to wrap up this annual report series.
Thank you. So not for Christmas, but somewhere in early New Year is the estimate, right?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So as you can tell, this is quite elaborate, but filling in the gaps is our goal, and trying to cover past things as much as future things it's complicated. But thank you, Scott and Carol and everybody else involved in getting it together. Transparency is really good as long as we're all wearing undergarments, and where you can't find them, it's really hard to do. So that would conclude our 5 unfinished business, 6 new business, unless somebody else has a comment on the previous old business. Okay, Katrina, we're almost there. Just kidding. New business is the summary of our discussion from the council meeting on 10/26. I remember talking about this, but I don't remember whether we needed.
This is actually a carryover from another agenda. This is simply when I had reported to you all about my discussion with the council about having this tiering of complaints, and that I would be bringing an ordinance change for their consideration, which I have not composed yet, and in order to deal with this problem of trying to manage the serious complaints versus the less serious complaints. And so until that comes forward, there won't be really anything else to talk about there.
Thank you, Carol. And actually, I want to take that as a parenthesis, to put in a parenthesis. And Scott, you will check me, but our ordinance talks about, what is it called? Not uniformed officers, but
sworn officers.
Sworn officers, thank you, is the right word. And I think to address Christopher's comment too, we don't avoid FOIA. We have to avoid FOIA when it has no relevance to us, where the argument is. When the city has a decision as to what to release, they have somebody that's hired, and there is somebody supervising that person, and it's state level. And when they make mistakes with it, frankly, it's their business. When a complaint comes to us and there is information that is needed, I think that it is fair for us to be seeking all information relevant to a case to be before us and before the parties. But we don't do FOIA complaints. We actually, Carol, from whenever you get to sending that ordinance, we do sworn officers. And when Carol makes a mistake or a decision that doesn't have to do with us directly, unfortunately, it's hard for us to extend ourselves. I know that you're working on some kind of other complaint officer for complaints system for other city employees, but in order for us to get through everything, we have to concentrate on the ones that are in our charge. And I don't think it's to evade, but it's to concentrate and do the work that we've been called to do first. So, so that's a comment there. Anyway, I'm very happy with the way we're collaborating, getting stuff together, filling in the old gaps, and looking forward as to the agenda of what to recommend. I am happy also that, especially in a close hearing, everybody speaks their mind and brings in all the videos and checks in, correct each other. I don't think that we have to put out to the public any other our decision after having considered all the facts. So I thank you very much for being careful to protect the privacy of parties concerned. And Mr. Peppers is on the line. There's a lot of help that you've already started to move along. You will make your mistakes as I make mine. And if you promise not to slap me, I won't slap you either.
No slappage. No slappage.
Okay. We'll deal with it with words. Use your words is what my wife tells the kids all the time. All right. Anything else on that line item? Then you have before you in your packet the regular meeting schedule for 2021. Thank you, Lamont, for working on it. These are proposed dates. I have had trouble meeting dates of this type sometimes, and so last one I try to prep everybody that I was able to. But as far as board members, please do cross-reference with your calendars, and if you have a problem with one of those dates or two or whatever, put it forward. It is very important that when we meet, we have quorum so that we can progress the work. Otherwise, in our present case, when only 2 members are here, then it's very awkward. They can come, they can invite everybody, but in the end, their progress and ability to progress things is limited. So anyway.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So these proposed dates, they'll be virtual, but then once, we're gonna hope that COVID doesn't progress through the entire 2021, then we'll be in person, correct?
Yeah, whenever, I wish I could be hopeful that within the year we are meeting in person. It's a lot more fun and it's just more efficient, but yeah.
Okay.
I think that we are as dependent as anybody else out there with formal meetings. We don't have any idea. And I'm not in the first batch of vaccines anyway, so who knows?
Okay.
All right.
And I'm assuming that the meeting schedule is still a 5:30 schedule?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we moved it forward. We hope it fits with everybody. In between these are hearing dates that you are being pulled on. Let's respond to those so we can get it also on the calendar as much as possible. The regular meeting schedule is to treat business, and we can make them as short as we need to so that we don't shortchange the hearing dates. So, all right.
Ricardo, are we trying to do a hearing every month, or is there a do we have a guideline on what we're trying to do? Is like
I'm open to suggestions. Right now, we've been trying to, when we align, we try to put it as a good day. We almost did 2 last month, but it didn't work out. So
I was just curious if we had I mean, I know we had talked about, I think I talked about with you individually about let's just try and set a regular date each month, or just so we can kind of get in the habit of doing it. But I didn't know if there was any further discussion with this meeting schedule.
we have not actually, because it depends on us, but also on the city.
Sure.
So go ahead, Carol.
Well, I was going to say a couple different things. One is if you would like to devote some of these regular meeting dates, because the schedule for CPRB used to be quarterly regular meetings. So if you would like to dedicate any of these regular meetings to doing a hearing instead, I can try to coordinate that with the hearing officer. What I've been doing, based on a conversation that I had with Ricardo, is trying to chunk out. So now I'm chunking it out by month and doing the doodle polls with y'all, and then seeing where I get enough, where I can get a quorum, and then every one of those dates I run past the hearing officer. Well, I start with Jason first, because he tells me when we have availability on Zoom. Then that's what goes into the doodle poll. Then what comes out of the doodle poll is when I can get a quorum. Then that goes to the hearing officer, and that distills down to a couple of dates. And in the past, Ricardo asked me not to double up in a particular week with the regular meeting.
Hearing and regular meeting.
Yeah, so we have, so the way the January dates fall out is they don't fall in the same week. If you, as you know, you have a pretty big backlog of hearings. So I'm trying to at least offer as many dates as possible that work under the framework I just described to you for trying to get everybody coordinated.
Well, under the spirit, I think that Mikkel meant it when we went to monthly meetings. I would suggest that we not avoid the dates that regular meetings are scheduled, but rather take advantage of them at least until the backlog in appeals cases are finished and we can kind of get through those. I mean, having a hearing, in fact, doesn't preclude us from having a meeting at the same time, although I don't think anybody wants a 5-hour meeting. But if we had a quorum, we could certainly do some necessary business if something came up around the fringes of a closed session in public, as you know, as long as we're agended correctly and notified. So I don't know what anybody else.
What I'm hearing you say, Scott, is that why not take those regular meetings and make them in hearing wherever we can, and double up. It would certainly accelerate what other business we put forward, but hearings is a big part of our business. So,
well, I think mostly, or at least primarily, it's in keeping with the reason that we went to monthly meetings, and that was to expedite the concerns of the community. And it seems to me like, you know, an appeals hearing is kind of the pinnacle of our service to the community in some ways. And so why ignore those, you know? I mean, especially if it would help Carol do the calendaring and organize, you know, these 3 or 4 other people. I mean, we haven't talked yet about representatives from UPD. So you've actually got 4 or 5, I've never counted them, entities that are required for us to have an appeal. So I wouldn't dodge those.
yeah. So I think I hear you, and if Katrina's in agreement that we should put together and try to schedule hearings on these dates, we already have gone through the work, or Carol has, to seek another January date. So I would propose that we still keep another January date, but then henceforward, for the regularity that Tony is asking, we should keep these dates, hopefully to do some business, but do hearings as we're able. Am I interpreting you guys' thoughts correctly? Okay, so be it, Carol. So these dates are free to start putting hearings together, and we'll squeeze in the rest of the business as needed, except for January. January, we already have a listening session and we have a proposed hearing dates. Okay?
But you're okay if I also try to find other dates that you're available for hearings in those months, right? Or not? I mean,
I am. I didn't mean using the dates that are on the calendar for the monthly meetings to preclude any other kind of arrangements you want to do.
Okay.
But if we all agree in this schedule, we've already got one day a month we're going to meet.
Gotcha. Okay, I got it.
All right. So we'll take it. We have January almost set, so much appreciated to have everybody on the same literal page. So that concludes then the items we have had under new business. We do have a couple.
Ricardo?
Yes, ma'am.
Ricardo, can I mention something? I believe that we need you all to vote on those dates to approve them, especially because there are two that are not on the regularly scheduled days because of the holidays.
Oh.
I make a motion that we approve the regular meeting schedule for 2021 as presented.
Take a second.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Daryl. So please, Tamara, thank you for the reminder, and let's go for a vote.
Tony Allegretti?
Yes.
Ricardo Diaz?
Yes.
Scott Dossett?
Yes.
Katrina Kendall?
Yes.
Daryl Price?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a big commitment now with a yes. It reminds me how important it is. Thank you very much. Moving now to announcements. We still have the CPRB vacancies. We have two. We have had one person interviewed and another application put in. We'll let you know as it comes by. The decision is the mayor's by the rules, but we have been invited to the interviews as they're scheduled. And thank you, Scott, for filling in the last time, and Katrina for volunteering also. I eventually had to really bail, and so thank you for covering. That's that announcement, and we're pretty good people. Please join us. The recruitment of the HREO is something from city. We don't know where it's at.
So I just would report that we've received 38 applications and we're in the process of deciding who's going to be in the first round of interviews at the moment. So that's the status on that.
Thank you. That just means we'll have Lamont less time because he'll be assigned to them too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
I try to be of best use as possible.
I know, but I had to report one of the questions today from the analytics was how much staff do you have? So I had to remind them that, you know, we had a slice of Carol because she's city administrator. I don't know what your percentage is with us, but you know, I know it's a slice. But I claim you, Lamont, and she asked me how long you're going to have him, and I said, I don't know. We'll get a slice of him too. So anyway, that's important. We've already talked about 7C, which is the proposed dates. We will confirm either or very soon. As to which one you'll have to reserve at least, well, we've been doing them in 3 hours. If we get good at this, we might be able to do it in less time, but do block yourself in, pencil yourself in for that. Is there anything else that we have to do as a board before we go on to public participation? Okay, that being true, and then spending there, we have, hearing back, we have public participation, Christopher Hansen, and so far that's it. Go ahead, Christopher.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, Christopher Hansen again. Unfortunately, you guys had some Open Meetings Act problems with this meeting. I'm not really sure why we didn't try to make a greater effort to fix Mr. Gert's microphone. But the Senate bill 2135 that allows for you to have this virtual meeting is very clear. You must allow the public to contemporaneously hear all discussion, testimony, and roll call votes. So I guess it's good that you weren't voting on something, but from an Open Meetings Act perspective, the testimony you heard from Mr. Gert is improper. So I don't know if you want to have him revisit the board or how you're going to deal with that, but it should have been addressed at this meeting, because I couldn't make out a lot of what he said. I could make out some of it. What I could make out, I found very upsetting and unfortunate. He started by saying he's not a police apologist, and then he dove directly into most of the talking points that someone who is an unrelenting police apologist would bring up. And he said these, he said, I've never been shot at, shot and stabbed. And then he said, quote, that's what our officers deal with on a daily basis. That's factually wrong. Our officers are not shot at and stabbed on a daily basis. If you were to look into incidences of Urbana police officers being shot at, you would have to go back in time on a time scale of decades to start to accrue incidences where officers are actually shot at or attacked with a knife or something. It's very rare. And when you look at national statistics, you actually find that police officers are much safer in their persons than most other people. Like you're twice as likely to be murdered as a non-police officer than as a police officer. Individuals who have jobs such as construction workers, truck drivers, airplane pilots, anyone working any type of manual labor type job are all prone to greater rates of injury and death than police officers are. So I don't understand why we're playing this silly game. And I found it especially upsetting when Mr. Gertz said something about an officer being judged for the rest of his life based on a split-second decision. I don't know why we apply this metric to police officers, but not to civilians. The police officer trains for hundreds or thousands of hours to make the right split-second decision. Civilian does not get that opportunity. So it's just really silly, and I don't trust anything that he said. And I need to remind the CPRB that the city legal department and their hired legal staff have frequently been wrong recently in their legal determinations and claims. Numerous letters from the Illinois Attorney General saying that they're violating FOIA. They just lost a lawsuit. They're about to lose a couple more lawsuits on FOIA and Open Meetings Act. There's no reason to trust any legal advice provided by the city legal department or their hired contractors. I just don't understand why we would do that when they're so frequently wrong. And I'd also like to point out that the pedantic discussions like the ones about the firsthand account language are exactly why people don't want to approach the CPRB, because it doesn't look like we're getting anywhere. And in regards to that firsthand account language, I was looking at the ordinance and I wonder in section 1928D, do we also need to nix the part that says a minor shall be represented by a parent or guardian? Because that parent or guardian was likely not physically present at the incident. So I'm wondering if we need to throw that out as well. I'm also wondering about due process when it comes to video evidence. Does every person who submits a complaint need to first be interrogated to see if they're basing it on being physically present or video evidence? What's the definition of physically present? That's not in the ordinance. It's not in the FOP. Do they have to be within 10 feet, 20 feet? What if they saw it from 2 blocks away? What does that interrogation look like? What's the definition of witness? That's not defined in the ordinance. So, and then my last comment, and I'll wrap it up. the issue of FOIA, I still don't understand your posture on this. If I have an incident and I interact with an officer and then I email that officer and say, hey, can you send me a copy of that police report from this incident? They have a statutory obligation to either do that or send it forward to the city FOIA officer so that that gets done. That's a state law. So why this board would want to say, we're not dealing with that, or it's not part, there's no exemption in the CPRB ordinance for FOIA. So I wish you'd explain that further. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy and then Jane, come up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Tracy.
Yeah, I'm Tracy Chong from Urbana. I missed the first public input session, so I'm really glad that your board decided to have this second one. First, I would like to say I was disappointed to see that there was no follow-up with the taser review that looked like there was a violation of UPD policy. And I'm also glad that you brought up the empty silences during the listening sessions. I thought that was very concerning too, especially when there were 0 youth participants. And that was why I was even more concerned when Mayor Marlene told council that it went very well. I hope this board is part of the future UPD listening sessions and is consulted before these sessions are heard. And if you're not, do question why you're not. And also maybe pay attention to where the new community engagement coordinator's priorities lie. Because even though he said that his job was to listen to the public, even though he doesn't like what he's hearing, he actually muted me for saying Brian Serafin's name when describing the Aaliyah Lewis incident. Next, regarding tonight's first-hand account discussion, why is Ben Gert's opinion more valid than other attorneys' opinions? Other attorneys have said that video evidence is considered first-hand account, which is the requirement of the ordinance. Again, Tony and Ricardo's points are spot on that this is just the entryway to start an investigation. So why are we trying to limit the complaint process by referring to the FOP? The FOP has no bearing in this. When it comes to the investigations, many other forms of evidence that can satisfy the FOP can be sought. This whole issue is only an artificially created hurdle by Carol Mitten, and she found someone to agree with her and come sprout this nonsense to you guys. It really made me angry to hear this, and I think it's also very disrespectful to your board. Also, who is Ben Gert to decide if the ability to admit video evidence is a hindrance to police accountability? He clearly has a bias, and he started by making statements alluding to how dangerous police jobs are. Thus, he's justifying that it's okay that they are held to a different standard compared to just the public. Next, why are you guys agreeing and accepting that the public cannot submit a complaint based on video? Right now in the ordinance, there's nothing that says you can't. Mitten and Gert's points about the FOP are irrelevant. If you guys are still disagreeing on the meaning of first-hand account as written in the ordinance, then that's what you should take a vote on among yourselves. That is the issue at hand to be settled. Again, Carol Mitten just made stuff up. She just said that one cannot file a complaint, quote unquote, unless you are physically present and have a first-hand account. That's a lie. The ordinance says that complaints shall be based upon a first-hand account either by the person involved in the incident or a witness to the incident. Where is she coming up with the physically present stuff? I don't know. Again, she makes stuff up based on what suits her view. How are you guys allowing this to happen over and over again? If you guys feel like video should be allowed to initiate a complaint, why not just do it? The ordinance lets you do it. I'm sure if you do, yes, Carol Mitten will write a letter objecting, just like she vetoed the results of a recent HRC hearing that she didn't like. But so what? You guys are bound by the ordinance. Not by Carol Mitten's version of the ordinance, not by Carol Mitten's interpretation of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. We'll get to our next person. Let me just say, just the way we run these meetings, we don't ask Carol to respond to public comment directly. I do feel that when we make her the culprit in so many things, we are doing ourselves a disservice, because we have to rely not only on Carol, but the rest of the city staff. And so from my perspective, I will be respectful to them, as I hope they are to me, even when I make a mistake. But in my case, when I work with both Carol, Amand, or whoever else, I will certainly, like I do with everybody else, I'd rather work on their strengths and then work through each other's weaknesses. In this case, I have chosen not to apply strictly the instruction about running the meetings and using people's names in a degrading manner. I forget what it actually says, but I do believe that it influences us all when it's so directly and so pointed. So thank you. Jane.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hey, I just wanted to, I'm probably going to echo a little bit what has already been said, so I will be brief. I think that Mr. Gert, you know, I mean, he expressed his sort of opinion of the board and his bias, I think would be a fair thing to say. And, you know, I at the time I was like, well, it's kind of inappropriate because we don't really need his opinion. We need his legal analysis. But it is sort of helpful for understanding that legal analysis to see the perspective that he has. And I mean, I guess my feeling is that he has a very low opinion of the board. I would think that this board would be fair-minded and productive for all police officers, the quote-unquote good ones, the quote-unquote bad ones. The idea of this board is to develop the strengths, like Ricardo was just saying, to, you know, look at what's good and celebrate it, to look at what's bad and grow from there. So this board needs to provide more oversight and more feedback, not less. So I think it's really disappointing that the city is, you know, really trying to, in every way, to limit you. If they had this concern, they could have brought it up months ago. This is clearly, you know, a late in the game effort to find something that will stop this, you know, sort of common sense change that, you know, we're all, I think, kind of on the same page about. I wondered too, I wanted to ask Mr. Gert, I have raised my hand, but I'm sure I cannot interrupt the middle of your meeting. But I was curious about section 22.2a. Police officers do not, if they choose to appear before the CPRB, they do not waive their rights, but it's optional for them to appear. And also the CPRB deciding to, you know, read essentially a complaint really doesn't compel an officer to appear at all. This would be all kind of, I would think, before they would appear or not appear. So I don't see how so I was curious to see how Mr. Gert had assumed that this aspect of the contract would even apply to whether or not the CPRB wanted to have a look at a complaint. I also would offer, if this does appear to be an obstacle to what the CPRB wants to do, which is provide more and better feedback to the Urbana Police Department, maybe you should just think of another vehicle by which you can review complaints that are based on video or not based on a, you know, the Carol Mittens or someone else's interpretation of firsthand account. Maybe the CPRB just wants to offer a recommendation based on those kind of observations by the public. So I would suggest that, you know, we think in ways that enable us to strengthen the relationship between the public and the police department, not limit ourselves based on artifices. Anyways, thank you guys for your work. Appreciate your sticking with this long meeting, and thank you, Scott, for all your work on the data.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jane. And I echo Scott, many hours. I wish I was also closer to you on all that, but we do what we can and then we go to sleep. Gotta rest. Thank you very much for your comments. We do take them. They are taken into consideration even when it hurts. But I must say I am happy to be working with this group, even when there isn't a lot of net. It feels like sometimes we should defend ourselves, but we do what we can. We stick to where we want to, where we can be as fair as possible. And then we call this meeting adjourned. You okay with that?
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you very much.
I will second that motion.
Daryl, Faithful, and Tamara, help us.
Allegretti,
Yes.
Ricardo Diaz,
Yes.
Scott Dossett,
Yes.
Katrina Kendall. Katrina?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Now-
Daryl Price?
Sorry.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned until we confirm one of the dates for a hearing or our next regular meeting on the 27th. Have a good break if you